They faced incredible odds and unbeatable enemies to earn the name hero. But now there's a new way to spell action.
Do not go in there! Woo! Bumblebee Tuna! Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. How are you doing this afternoon? Alrighty then. Excuse me, but your balls are showing. Come to me, my jungle friends! Oh! Well, just to let you know, I have reflexes of a cat and a speed of a mongoose. Go ahead, do it! I dare ya! Because I want you to say hello to my stinky little friend. How about, of course, I give you a call? Your number's still 901? Alrighty then. Take care now. Bye-bye then. Loser.
Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Alrighty then. It is I, Daniel. You may call me the pop culture dude, and today I'm gonna make another video that I have not made in a while, and it's not about the blue hedgehog this time. This is about the man who plays the villain of Dr. Robotnik in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. And I'm not talking about the character Robotnik, I'm talking about the man behind the character. Is none other than my childhood hero and my favorite movie actor, Jim Carrey. For those of you who knows me like impersonally on Twitter, on Hangouts, and this channel, and everything as a whole, you definitely know that I am one of the biggest Jim Carrey fans. But for some of you who don't know, he was the actor that inspired me just to be myself, like whenever I'm in public, if I want to be goofy or silly or make silly expressions and just be a little over the top, but in a way just take inspirations from what I can learn from him as an actor. And he has the most iconic and relatable career that I eventually gets to see in his depiction. And his career is just too iconic that none of his movies are none of that forgettable. He even retweeted back in March 1st of 2021, where he appreciated the retweet of Dr. Robotnik's dance video if Robotnik has to create a clone challenge. But in a way, I just got very flattered that I did shed a tear by that time, be like, this is what a dream come true, because it is, and I felt truly blessed, honest to God, about it. And I even got an autograph from him, and it's his classic 90s photo shoot that is in the Comedy Store back in California, and it has the iconic catchphrase about the character that will be discussed in this video of the role that make a breakout is Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. So thank you very much. And I'm gonna say, before we get to talk about what is this video all about, like, Daniel, why are you making a video about Jim Carrey and who is Ace Ventura? If you don't know Ace Ventura, then you don't really know about Jim Carrey's career as a whole. You might have heard of his name in The Grinch or the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, but not the role that break him out as a Hollywood star where everybody knows who he is. And that's why we're going to discuss a full movie collection that we are going to start off the role that would just break out Jim Carrey's career into a Hollywood star. And I'm talking about Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and When Nature Calls. And the reason why I did it, because it's November 10th and it is the 25th anniversary of the sequel to Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, and Pet Detective. And before I get to discuss this topic, because maybe there's some of you in the comments by saying, oh, but Daniel, I never saw the Ace Ventura films. I don't know what you're talking about. Why do you want to make me feel so interested? Well, here's the thing. Allow me to clarify. The whole purpose that I want you to be interested in checking out Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and When Nature Calls, because it's a good comedy movie, but at the exact same time, this is one of his most iconic roles that whoever I talk to realize I always say most of his quotes. Like, basically, the reason why I say, oh, alrighty then, in most of his videos, because that's Ace Ventura's particular catchphrase. But what if I tell you, like, what is the origin of before getting to the role of Ace Ventura in a way? So, way before we're gonna move on, let's just talk about to the beginning. Before I get to talk about both Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and its sequel, When Nature Calls, let's get back to the past. Let's see that. It is the replay. Newmarket, Ontario in 1962, January 17, James Eugene Carrey's comedy dreams started young, but by the age of 10, Jim Carrey was so confident that he led his own comedic impersonation skills that he wrote a letter to Carol Burnett asking for a role on her show. But apparently the sad news that the show didn't cast him, but Jim Carrey didn't give up. Even when his mother was sick, his father lost his job, and he dropped out of high school, the entire family was found homeless, but Jim Carrey always had time for comedy. But during a performance at Yuck Yucks, he got the eyes of comedic legend Rodney Dangerfield. But it also gives Rodney Dangerfield to hire him to open him for Las Vegas. But after touring with Rodney Dangerfield, Jim Carrey set sights in television and films. He auditioned for Saturday Night Live in 1980, but he wasn't offered from the job on the NBC show, which he did 3 times host the show, mind you.
You are too poor! Return immediately!
But entering for a role in In Living Color changed everything.
Wrote myself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered, and I gave myself 5 years.
Many charts that start of the rise of his career with the film Earth Girls Are Easy in 1989. Well, this sci-fi spoof show that Jim was doing what he's best known for, being outrageous on screen. Thanks to his Earth Girls co-star Damon Wayans, the film led to a regular spot on the TVs in Living Color, and after a few seasons, the series gave Jim Carrey an exposure to greenlight a picture about a certain pet detective.
Hi, Jim Carrey. I'm playing Ace Ventura in this movie. I'm glad you told me you were going to do this because I'm usually naked when I'm in this chair.
Jim Carrey is Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. He's the best there is.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Pet detective!
Enter Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Jim Carrey became somewhat a well-known cast member after In Living Color, but his memorable celebrity impressions and knack for physical humor for being a stand-up comedian sets his skills big on the big screen for his breakout role that everybody adores in the 90s and adores Jim Carrey as a fan-favorite comedic star. But first, where it all began, back during the production, the chairman and CEO of Morgan Creek Productions, James G. Robertson, sought to produce a comedy that will have the worldwide appeal, and he hired a gag writer named Tom Shadyac, who pitched a rewrite to the script of Robinson and was hired to direct the film as his first directional debut. And fun fact, he did work with Jim Carrey 3 times. After the success of Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, he get to reunite with Carrey in Liar Liar and in Bruce Almighty in his career. But this was his first movie. But before Jim Carrey was considered to play the role as the Pet Detective, he wasn't the first choice. They considered Rick Moranis to play the role, but he declined it. But they also have other casting considerations like Judd Nelson or Alan Rickman. But they considered even one time to change Ace Ventura's gender to be a woman and cast Whoopi Goldberg for the role. But ultimately, the producers got their eye on Jim Carrey's performance in the sketch comedy show In Living Color and officially cast him as Ace Ventura. And when Jim Carrey was on board, he helped rewrite the script and let the filmmakers improvise anything that he would do on set. And at the end of the day, the movie was cost in a budget of $15 million, and for Jim Carrey's first leading motion picture film, he only got paid for over $350,000 in his salary. And then at the end of the day, when it was premiered on February 4th, 1994, the movie grossed over $10.1 million in the box office opening weekend, and then in total in its worldwide box office revenue, it grossed over $107.2 million. Alrighty then, since we already get to the early productions of the origins of the film, let's talk about who is Ace Ventura and why he is the pet detective in the story. Well, Ace Ventura, he's an eccentric self-styled pet detective who forsook many regular police work to concentrate on his later pursuit, like other fictional detectives, and he is like the combination of James Bond, Sherlock Holmes, and Tarzan. And then that's how you get the personality of the character of Ace as a whole. And he's able to have extraordinary powers of how the way he observes the most other detectives, and his unique abilities just goes to his quirky and his wild animal-like behavior, especially the reason why that he actually has some care, sympathy, and adoration for the animals rather than human beings, because humans has a huge mistreatment, while Ace, on the other hand, will protect any animal life that is needed for their help. And that's what makes Ace Ventura, Ace Ventura.
Action.
But Jim didn't do Ace Ventura Pet Detective just for the sake of money and the shot for being super popular. The star claimed that the subject of Ace was very near and dear to his heart.
I'm sick and tired of pet detection being, ignored.
You really love animals, don't you?
If it gets cold enough.
He's above it all, He's got his place in life. He's got his little apartment. He's got his animals, and he's just cool.
The story follows Ace Ventura as a very eccentric, Miami-based private detective who specializes in retrieving tame or captive animals. He struggles to pay rent at his own apartment, and often mocked by the Miami Police Department, who's led by Lieutenant Luis Ihorn, who finds Ventura insufferable.
Pet dick, how would you like me to make your life a living hell?
Well, I'm not really ready for a relationship, Lois.
2 weeks before the Miami Dolphins are in to play in the Super Bowl, their mascot, a bottlenose dolphin named Snowflake, is kidnapped. And with a little help from Melissa Robertson, played by Courtney Cox, she is a dolphin cheese publicist who helps Ventura to find the case to find Snowflake for the missing dolphin before the Super Bowl comes in 2 weeks. So that should give you a clear synopsis of the plot, but anyway, let's talk about the main cast themselves, including the main star of the film, Jim Carrey himself. We know that he's been marvelous in many of the films that he is in. He is a comedic genius. Even though his performance as Ace Ventura has been hilarious enough to make him a star, people will not expect what has he done to make research to create the character of Ace Ventura. After all, one of the best aspects was his performance in this movie, which seems creates like the flying in a way in some true ways. But however, he just told in a Conan O'Brien interview and even some interviews in inside the actor's studio where he talks about how Ace Ventura is how the way his body of movements embodies the birds and how he eventually moves his head and how he twitches around the film.
You look fantastic.
Thank you.
You look absolutely amazing, and let me see that. I love the shirt. That's fantastic.
My stylist, Stacy Couchman, designed this, gave it to me as a surprise. It's Ace Ventura's body and the head of a cockatiel. Does
it have significance? Does it have meaning?
It's the inspiration for the character originally was a cockatiel, a smart bird. I created Ace around the idea of a smart bird. So when I walk, I do this thing.
Oh, that's right.
Like that. I eat a lot of sunflower seeds and stuff.
I never thought about that. That's now that I know where it came from.
Very complex how I work.
That explains the pooping too.
That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly, on everything, on the lampshades. Yeah. But I once had dinner with Anthony Hopkins. I invited him over for dinner, and he accepted. Yeah. And I was trying to read a big book when he got there. But,
did you have a crazy oversized pipe?
I had a tome. I just give me a tome. And he came over, and we had dinner together, and I told him that that's how I approached Ace Ventura. It was a smart bird, and he went, I do that. I do that. Hannibal Lecter was a cross between a crocodile and a spider, a tarantula spider, with infinite patience, infinite time to just wait for the perfect moment to strike! And he would... and
you were alone in the house with him.
I was eating dinner with him, and frankly, it got a little creepy.
Yeah.
It really did. It started getting creepy. I started going, more roast beef, man? There's plenty in the kitchen. Just keep Anthony full.
No need to go human on me. Right. Yeah.
Funny to know that he actually got inspired by a bird. Same goes how Anthony Hopkins gets inspired by his iconic role as Hannibal Lecter as both a spider and a crocodile. But also, another iconic catchphrase that I usually say in every video that I make, including the character of Ace himself. Where does the "alrighty then" catchphrase come from? Well, it took some time to deliver, but what is the best catchphrases? That was a line that was absolutely perfect by Jim Carrey himself, where Ace became a surprise hit, where many people like me and many other fans keep on saying, alrighty then, once they leave. But guess what? There was a moment where the director, Tom Shadyac, on the movie's commentary that says, the line was one of the several things that Carrey designed to be specifically quotable. He also made it clear that it was some of his failed ideas that he did in one of his stand-up acts, but he also hoped that the motion that he made his fingers would be saying, alrighty then, would be popular. But sadly, the click and the thumb snap with the tongues twisting out, it didn't become popular by that time, sadly. But what was another interesting fact that I didn't know for watching this movie for the first time is where Jim Carrey insisted one of his favorite bands to appear in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Like several years into his career when he began working on Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, He already built his fan base from this time in living color, but he was far from being a huge star, so with that in mind, it seems likely that he'll be able to make any demands when he signs on to be the star in his first Ace Ventura film, but turns out it isn't the case. Instead, he was able to assist one of his favorite bands growing up called Quotable, which is a popular heavy metal act that gets to appear in the movie, and it gets touched in the interview to the band that gave to Noisy. They revealed today, or the label, and called them back and let them know that Jim Carrey wanted them to be in the movie that he was making. And even there was a deleted scene where he was in part of the band around that scene.
Ace is in a place where life is just a bowl of cherries and fun, and he just goes off and has his own little tangents, and I mean, he's the kid that you can't discipline. You just cannot discipline him, you know, because but he is a good person, but he's a wild man.
Hey! I could do anything to embarrass me in front of camp.
What? Like this?
Hi, Captain Stubing.
And that's where you get the sense of the wild nature of Ace Ventura. But anyway, let's talk about one of the most important core characters that helps Ace solve in the case of the Miami Dolphins is none other than Melissa Robertson, who's played by Courtney Cox. And she did not have a breakout role until she eventually appeared in this film and also becomes Monica in Friends, which is a very popular sitcom of the 90s. But before that, she was signed to play the female lead in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, even though she was afraid of some of the animals in the feature film. Like, there's any other actors that are just doing their best to like make it someday, but for the reason is common knowledge is to tell if you're an actor that they need to ride on a horse to land on it. If that claim, that is the case for Courtney Cox, because in the director's movie commentary that Tom Shadyac says, he revealed that Courtney was even afraid of the monkey where she shares scenes with, and it was often on set with Jim Carrey when he was playing with Ace.
My character fits in the film because I work for the Dolphins. I'm the head of PR for the Miami Dolphins. It's about 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, and someone came and stole Snowflake, which is the mascot for the Dolphins. It's always there on the field, and it's a pretty big, important part. I'm about to get fired, so I'm here to find this dolphin, so I hire a pet detective, kind of as a last resort. I mean, who would think pet detective? But we hire Ace Ventura, and then my character fits in because I become his love interest. This is probably the most fun that I've had working on any job. And I'm the type of person that can't stand to go on location. I've actually had a great time down here. I mean, it's fun. He cracks me up from the time I come into work to the time I leave.
So even though Courtney Cox and Jim Carrey has really good chemistry both on screen and off screen, but they weren't the biggest stars of this production, not yet at least. But during the production, the biggest star who was involved in this movie was rapper artist Tone Loc himself, who did the song of Yo Ace in the House. And ironically, almost entirely gone from the public eye for many years from now, the only time that Tone Loc pops up into these days is when he appears in shows about the 90s and 80s nostalgia, but as a result, it's easy to forget how popular he was due to the decades of releasing hit songs like Wild Thing and Funky Cold Medina. Other than that, his biggest claim to his fame was his supporting role in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. And when the movie comes up these days, people did not know who Jim Carrey was, who Courtney Cox was, or even who Sean Young was at first. However, if you were around in the 90s when Pet Detective was released in theaters, you may remember him being the most famous member of the cast, something that the director Tom Shadyac brings up during the movie's commentary.
He's like one of the guys on the inside who kind of understands Ace a little bit, you know, because Ace is like out there, you know, he's a kind of a strange cat. And I'm kind of like his little inside scoop. I'm the man he comes to all the time, and he's kind of always hassling me, getting me in trouble, you know what I'm saying, going back and forth, but we have a good rapport with each other, you know. Dan is cool, you know what I'm saying. I had a chance to kick it, throw the ball around with him. He's real cool, because I like Dan. I've been checking Dan out for a while anyways, so it's not like I wasn't a Dan Marino fan. I actually like him. Great spiral. He's real cool, down to earth. That's the main thing I like about it around here, is that there's no head tripping.
And speaking of Dan Marino, former NFL Miami's Dolphin football player Dan Marino does play a major part in the final act of the film that definitely ties in a connection with Snowflake, and he did talk in an interview of what was his like in the production, what was like working with Jim Carrey himself in the film.
Yeah, it's kind of tough acting, you know, and being yourself. I mean, it's real tough for me because I've been trying to, you know, look in the mirror in the morning and finding out, you know, how I'm going to act that particular day. And so it is a stretch, but you know, I'm dealing with it. It's been a good experience for me, and I'm enjoying it, and I am. I'm learning a lot. And that's the neat thing about it.
From all the main cast members, from all the special guest stars, from everyone who actually contributed for the film and make Ace Ventura: Pet Detective being loved by many viewers, even though it's despised and hated by critics, but being written off as a monumentally stupid by professional reviewers. But it's one of the reasons why the movie was so dreaded, just because of the group in this movie that is being so embraced, and from Jim Carrey's over-the-top performances. But the one thing who made this movie possible and successful in the first place was the man who directed himself, Tom Shadyac, and he and Jim Carrey both realized that the film could have easily failed to the audience. But at the end of the day, to listen to Tom Shadyac's movie commentary, he revealed that he and Jim Carrey knew that it was going to go really big, and he warned that it failed, that their careers will be ruined. But it definitely raised their careers and definitely opens the potential for future careers that they eventually worked on.
They say don't work with animals and children, and I have about 50 animals in the show, and Jim Carrey. So I think that pretty much says it all.
I'm so out there in this movie, but that's what people expect from me. So I'm like out of the gate, I'm giving them exactly what they expect. It's like Fire Marshal Bill times 10.
I don't want to restrain him. You know, you don't cover the Mona Lisa. You don't put arms back on the Venus de Milo. You let it go. You know. So we're letting Jim go.
Do I have something in my teeth?
He's really the most ridiculous person you have ever seen in your life, because he's very over the top and very talented, very much like a rubber face. His face is just all over the place. He always does these faces that are really incredible. And while the rest of us are being very straight, he's really out there.
It's always a good idea, especially when you're doing an out there character like Ace, an over the top thing, to have people who are very real around you. So, you know, the cast was amazing. There's really great people.
I've never met anyone like this before, so obviously he's such a nut that there's some attraction there, and he does come up with some really goofy stuff. And he's fun. I mean, she leads a very straight life, so to meet someone like Ace and have her world turn upside down is...
Probably got me, you know, because he threw one of those, he threw one of those out at me, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute here. You can't be doing that kind of thing, you know, when I'm trying to get my actorial skills on, you know what I mean? You can't throw that look at me.
He talks to the animals, he sees things like 5 miles away. You know, I mean, he's not super powered, he's just Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
And after the success of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, it definitely rises Jim Carrey's career up to 11. And after that, in the year 1994, became his big breakout year. After the following, it became The Mask, then Dumb and Dumber, and then following in the year 1995, the director of Batman Forever, Joel Schumacher, cast him as the Riddler for Batman Forever. Same goes for the director of The Truman Show, one of his critically acclaimed movies. Peter Weir definitely got him on the eye of letting to play the major role when he first saw Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. So the very first Ace Ventura movie is a very important movie and part of Jim Carrey's history and his career and his life as a whole, and even he said it for himself that the first Ace Ventura film is definitely one of his favorites. And after the success from where Ace Ventura lead him to most of the other fan favorite roles in the 90s, will also lead him to a sequel.
In the deepest jungles of Africa, 2 tribes will fight a savage war unless a sacred animal god is found. So they're sending for the only man who can help. Ace Ventura is in Africa.
Nobody wants to play with me.
And Africa will never be the same.
I'm alive! I'm alive!
Say uncle! Say uncle!
Jim Carrey.
Do I have something in my teeth?
Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls.
Shakaka! Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls is the sequel to Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, and today marks 25 years ever since the release of this cult classic sequel that's been beloved by many of Jim Carrey fans, but also fans who adore the Ace Ventura film. And it's been the first Ace Ventura film before I see Pet Detective when I was young on Netflix, and I get to see a prop from the movie at Disney Springs before they sadly remove it, was the zebra jeep from the iconic Rhino birth scene. But before that, let me just talk about the story synopsis of Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. Legendary pet detective Ace Ventura, played by Jim Carrey, returns for another adventure where he's course out of retirement while on a soul-searching retreat in the Himalayas. He must now retrieve an endangered white bat from a village located in Africa. The sacred animal was offered up as a wedding dowry from the Wachutu prince to the Wachati princess, and if Ace can't track that cold portrait behind the kidnapping in time, civil war would break out between the two rival tribes. Doesn't like bats, you say? Well, it makes sense because in this film, Ace does not like bats, but also, in the same year, 1995, he played the Riddler Batman Forever, and he really didn't like bats at all. Bats! Anyway, sorry. Let's get back to that topic. It reminds me that Jim Carrey's co-star from Dumb and Dumber, Jeff Daniels, tells us that Jim Carrey's biggest problem during When Nature Calls was the onset where there was a subplot where Ace Ventura has a fear of bats. He thought the idea of it just feels like so cheap that he argued with the director of changing the script that Ace is just afraid of bats, that he's merely allergic to them and not fearful. And the fact that he was also apprentice of how potentially the offensive depiction of African natives in the film, that he was surprised that the film wasn't banned. And if you're probably saying is, why did Jim Carrey had a problem with some of the script? I'm gonna tell you why. It's the trouble behind the production of this film, because this movie, When Nature Calls, has a completely different director and completely different writers, and you'll feel like that this movie, When Nature Calls, is different from Pet Detective.
How the director maintains control of the section. Watch this,
Make him stop! Make him stop!
Okay. Stay on your mark next time.
Jim and director Steve Odekirk seem to be getting along famously.
Hey man, great take, you know, a little fast lead in. Jeez. Funny! The star in line.
Yup, that's right. Move over, Tom Shadyac. There's a new director in town, and his name is Steve Odekirk. Yes, Steve Odekirk, who happens to write in the screenplay for Bruce Almighty, which is directed by Tom Shadyac, and also one of the producers of Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, since Jimmy Neutron was inspired by Ace Ventura's hairstyle and Jim Carrey, and then mixed Bart Simpson and Albert Einstein. Then you go, there you have it, Jimmy Neutron, and Steve Odekirk was involved in them, and he also was one of the producers for Barnyard, the movie, as well. And speaking of director choices, Steve Odekirk was not the first choice. This movie, or this particular sequel, had so much director considerations to direct When Nature Calls. One of the biggest surprise hits of the early 90s of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective was so beloved that the sequel was so anticipated, so hyped. With that in mind, it came to choose who would direct When Nature Calls, and a lot of directors were considered. One of the first ones was Dom DeCario, who has only directed a short film, but the powers that he thought he'd be able to get up to the task. But sadly, during a premiere report, it reveals that Carrey would come to the set and find out that he would have to reblock many of the scenes, and he was not happy with the film's dailies. This leads to like many problems of DeCario's dismissal from the project, so he couldn't be able just to direct When Nature Calls. Another surprising directing consideration that Jim Carrey rejected, but this filmmaker was interested to make the sequel, was none other than one of the most interesting filmmakers in Hollywood, Spike Jonze, who has directed some visually amazing movies like Being John Malkovich, Her, and Where the Wild Things Are, and on top of that, he works with many other talents like Johnny Knoxville and even Steve Odekirk on their famous prank show movies. But it was such a huge shame that Spike Jonze was not given the opportunity to direct When Nature Calls, even though he wanted to do it. But sadly, Jim Carrey decided not want Jonze to direct the sequel, which later on, he just regretted just rejecting Spike Jonze in the first place, like it was his mistake. He spoke about donating a pitch for Jonze for the Ace Ventura sequel, says, "I've been kicking myself ever since." Also, one of the last interesting directing consideration choices was none other than the Farrelly brothers. Yes, Peter and Bobby Farrelly were offered a chance to direct Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, and both the brothers did direct it with Carrey on the same 1994 year with one of his biggest hits, Dumb and Dumber, and they seemed like a good choice for the project, but the reason why they decided to pass on the project is because they just felt like they were the wrong people. But hey, at least they reunited with Jim Carrey with Me, Myself, and Irene and Dumb and Dumber 2 many years later, which was Jim Carrey's second sequel. But for right now, we're going to talk about Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, since this is his first sequel, and I'm going to tell to the reasons why. Ever since Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, he does not want to do any more sequels until Dumb and Dumber 2 happened over 20 years later. So if you're probably going to be thinking like, but Daniel, if the sequel's going to have so much trouble production, does that make Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls a bad movie? Well, here's the thing. I know everyone's going to prefer the first movie over than the second, and I'm just going to tell you this. I think both Ace Ventura: Pet Detective and When Nature Calls, they're both equal to me. Like, I love them from either ways. And I know I'm about to go to the negative story about When Nature Calls. Don't worry, I will get to the positive because I do love When Nature Calls to death. But I will say this. Ace Ventura 2: When Nature Calls is the main reason why we're never going to get The Mask 2, which is my favorite Jim Carrey movie of all time, and it was going to happen in summer 1996, but it was canceled. But don't worry, let's keep hoping, let's keep dreaming. But anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, let's just get back to Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, and I will get to the positive things, but for right now, we gotta talk about the negatives. Stay calm. Alrighty then. I think one of the reasons why people didn't like When Nature Calls as much as Pet Detective just because it has the lack of familiar faces. Like, none of the original supporting characters didn't return to this film, except for the main character Ace Ventura himself. But hey, there were some pretty good actors like Ian McNeice, Simon Callow, and Sophie Okonedo, and even one of Jim Carrey's In Living Color co-stars appears in this movie as Tommy Davidson, where he's part of the Wachutu tribe, and eventually he's the one that throws the spears at Ace Ventura, and he's the one that makes the iconic scene. Nobody messes with the dew! Especially, I like the fact that this movie just makes Ace Ventura go to an international mission to Africa, which makes it so creative from the first film, but makes Ace Ventura go to his true animal instincts into the wildlife environment that he's interacting with. But this has got to be the part where Ace Ventura wants to take a break from the Pet Detective missions after the failure that he has done. No spoilers if you have not seen the film, but this has got to be the most meta part of Jim Carrey's role in this movie, where he's in a contract where he's obligated to be part of the sequel, because according to his co-star Simon Callow, who plays the main villain of the movie, Jim Carrey only had a little interest of reprising his role to an Ace Ventura cinematic sequel. The only reason why he agreed to be in the sequel is because he had a contract obligation to do so. Despite his resistance, Mercury Entertainment to persuade Carrey to do more Ace Ventura movies after When Nature Calls, but he declined it. So once When Nature Calls wrapped, Jim Carrey couldn't spend the rest of his life doing this one character, until Dumb and Dumber 2 was his only franchise film sequel that Jim Carrey appeared to the original, and possibly Dr. Robotnik 2 in the Sonic movie 2, since he wants to return the character as Robotnik for a Sonic movie sequel. But anyway, back to Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. But besides signing a contract to appear in the sequel, he was given to be paid $15 million, compared for how much that he got paid from the first movie with $350,000, he gets to be paid for $15 million. And the budget for the sequel was only $30 million. So that means Jim Carrey got paid half of the budget of this entire movie, and that is insane, just to reprise his role in When Nature Calls. And the figure was negotiated by Carrey himself and Morgan Creek with the help from the film directors and Steve Odekirk, aka Jim Carrey's longtime friend. And as a result, Jim Carrey was paid exactly as the film's entire budget. The price was set for the market for Jim Carrey services that would spend roughly the next decade, demanding roughly $20 million per Hollywood's most bankable movie stars after what he did with Cable Guy, Liar Liar, and the movies after When Nature Calls. But also, speaking to the due of his contract, it also makes Jim Carrey's contract clause affect the co-star's earnings. What I mean is, Jim Carrey spent a lot of time away from the production due to leave sick. Due to a clause in his contract such as illnesses were deemed an act of God, which meant producers did not have to pay fellow actors overtime for going over schedule. This directly affected co-star Simon Callow, who's in above and the right in this image, whose contract expired prior to the completion of filming. because his scenes were not finished due to Carrey's absence. Callow was forced to fly back and forth from his native UK to the set of the film and had to deduct the cost of the plane tickets from his own salary, which is one of the things that he regrets working in this production. Which leads me to the next topic, why the production of the movie was kind of messy. You know, there's best times where people that work behind the scenes from the movie walked away from the experience where they put a smile on their faces and think happy memories to come. But on the other end of the spectrum, there are some certain movies productions that have been nightmares, and one of them has been Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, from how awful the process must have been behind the scenes. Because the movie was hampered by a budget that was too small, by an ill-prepared director that was replaced at the last minute with a leading star actor who was often ill during the shooting process, and nothing seemed as gone as planned. Especially that one time that Jim Carrey actually had a feud with the director and the producers of When Nature Calls. It may be hard for some people to imagine for him caring about a character that is silly as Ace Ventura, but he clearly threw himself into a role with complete abandon. He cared about the depiction of Ace when he worked on When Nature Calls so much that co-star Simon Callow reported that during filming, Carrey was at war with the directors and the producers, and it's clear that he can be pretty uncompromising, but when he feels passionately about his art. And here's one example during the behind-the-scenes footage from what I've caught so far.
I mean, we just need it for just a couple of seconds.
Jim, please! How can I be expected to direct this under these circumstances, man? Come out! I'll do it. I'll do it. From now on, everybody wears one. That's the crew I love. Oh, you guys look great. Fantastic. Okay, tomorrow is Stupid Hat Day. Pick them up at the wardrobe trailer on the way out.
That was a lot of fun, man.
And that's one of the reasons why is that the sequel was kind of trouble behind the scenes. Suck me sideways. But does that mean I get like a negative opinion as the movie as a whole? No, because I still think it's a better Ace Ventura follow-up than an unnecessary direct-to-DVD spin-off featuring a non-canon story where Ace Ventura has a son, and we're not going to speak about that at all. But in a way that from Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, I could definitely tell that after that movie, Jim doesn't want to do sequels, he doesn't want to repeat the roles. But has he ever mentioned about return to the character? No, not as much. Not into this video where he doesn't want to repeat roles.
The same movies came out all in one year. Ace Ventura, The Masked Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
25 years of that iconic character.
Repeat.
What are you bringing back?
What am I bringing back?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm bringing nothing back.
No.
No. I'm moving forward.
It's gotta mean a lot to you.
The only thing is, like, you get a lot of pressure from people, you know, to bring things back and stuff, and then you do, and they go, okay, I just wanted you to do something.
But you're doing lots.
I'm doing tons, yeah. Yeah, but all new.
And then the same thing with Tommy Davidson, who basically just said that he's not interested at the moment. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't like to forget about the character, because he loves the first movie, but mixed feelings on the second one. But he still does the bird moves that Ace does, and still goes, alrighty then, and still does the on a recent Saturday Night Live skit. So in a way, that is it possible that an Ace Ventura 3 would happen? There were rumors back in December 2019, but it's never been acknowledged in a way, and Jim has spoke no words about it. So if there is no Ace Ventura 3, I'll definitely be fine either way. But if they are going to make one, then I'm going to be excited. Be like, let me in, my animal friends, like a glove. I'll be that excited. But in a way, that's it for the negativity about When Nature Calls. Let's get to the positivity of it. Like a glove! Alrighty then, if there's one thing I have to be so honest about this sequel, this movie is really funny, and the fact that it's very entertaining, that I never get bored from the end of the day. And Ace Ventura, he's the one that steals the show no matter what, and from his antics and from the best jokes, including one of my favorite scenes is where he ad-libbed the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang song from the movie that features Dick Van Dyke, who is one of Jim Carrey's heroes. But the thing that it was completely off script, but they definitely stay so in character of that, and I like how where he's driving Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and I just can't get it out of my head.
You are pretty bang bang, pretty bang bang, hey, 2, 1 plus 2, chitty bang bang, chitty bang bang, chitty bang bang, hey ho, chitty bang bang, pretty bang bang, you got just 1 plus 2, chitty bang bang, or 5, 4, bang, chitty bang bang, chitty bang bang, chitty bang bang, yeah! Alright, if I can just find a parking spot! Nonsense for me pants!
Hands down one of my favorite scenes to recreate, but there's another fan favorite scene that I usually like. I like the fact that in this movie, Ace Ventura parody and references a lot of cultural movies and references and dialogue from the past, including this opening sequence where it's a parody of the 1993 Sylvester Stallone movie, Cliffhanger, but in this version, Ace Ventura is trying to rescue a raccoon like it's spoofing the scene from the movie, and I will admit the music score for this film is phenomenal to listen to.
You know, you could put somebody's eye out with that thing.
Also, one of the things that I really love about the movie is the song choices, including the Secret Agent Man sequence for what makes Ace Ventura Ace Ventura. He's a detective in the lookout, in disguise, blending into the animal environment with his true wildlife instincts, be on the lookout for any suspicious suspects on the run. And the last scene that I want to go over review for why, or reason why I love Ace Ventura as a character as a whole and why he's really good as a pet detective. He acts like an idiotic buffoon to distract his enemies around just to be prepared for like an unexpected surprise attack until they eventually will find out on their own. And that's what makes Ace Ventura, in my opinion, a pet detective genius. And that's why whenever nature calls, he's the pet detective who's always on the job. Everything for what I just show you are pretty much all the reasons why Ace Ventura as a character in both of his movies definitely like is an important part of Jim Carrey's career, but as his history as a whole, and everything from what I show you, all of it is true, all of it is valid, and at the exact same time, if you enjoy the first 2 Ace Ventura movies, both Pet Detective and When Nature Calls, then maybe you should find a way to go rewatch them. But if you're new to them, by be like, hey, this is pretty funny, I want to go see it. But in a way, like, you can either buy on DVD or on Blu-ray. I got myself the double featurette that I got from Amazon. But if you guys do not watch DVDs anymore, then I recommend to go to this streaming service called Fubo TV that definitely has both the first film and the second film. And after the success of the second movie, it got over $212 million, and it got itself a Disney live stunt show. I'm being serious, a Disney live stunt show with Ace Ventura just to promote When Nature Calls. Now, I could go on and 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 on by telling me how much I love the Ace Ventura films, but just a conclusion that I definitely recommend for those who wants to rewatch the films, or if you're new to them, definitely give it a chance by that was the most important character and the most important role that establishes Jim Carrey's career as a whole as a great comedian and a great Hollywood star as a whole, and one of the reasons why that I quote saying, alrighty then, most of the time. And don't worry, like, will I do more videos like this? I will soon, because on November 7th in the year 2000, but in this year for 2020, I'll go over with The Grinch, probably like next week, so I can eventually just start doing my review and do every single movie facts that you have not known about it. But anyway, I'm getting tired. I'm definitely going to end this video, so if you guys have been watching through the very end, from the beginning to the end, in the words of Ace Ventura, thank you very much, Andy Helperton. So, good night, everybody. You've been a wonderful audience. I'll be here all week. Be sure to tip your waitress. Take care now. Bye-bye then.